Hey everybody, Jason here from iAnimate. How's everybody doing? Hopefully you're doing fantastic this week. So in this snippet, we're going to talk about opposite actions. So when I'm trying to key out a shot, what I try to look for is these opposing actions or opposite actions because it adds this visual interest to our shots, right? So in other words, if you have elements of our body going in the same direction at the same time, it starts to feel very mechanical. Like if somebody's doing the robot, like they kind of do this, right? They kind of do everything in the same direction at the same time. So what you're trying to do is add this sort of opposing action where it adds this visual interest and things starts to feel a little bit more natural. And this happens in everything. I look for this like, just in everyday life, like let's say we're just doing a gesture like this, right? Like, oh, this person's talking and he's talking like this, right? So what I'm trying to do here is actually see, even what I'm trying to do there is like my hand and my head kind of go in separate directions, right? And what I try to do is I look for that type of thing, right? So let's just talk about that, right? So let's say if we had, let's say our storytelling pose is basically this, right? Where this guy is talking and his body's kind of like this and he's explaining something and his hand is out like this, right? And maybe this hand is down here like this, right? So what I would try to do, like this is my storytelling pose, right? Where the guy is talking, he's all explaining stuff, right? He's all happy, right? So that's the pose that we're going to hit, right? So that's the pose that all the animation is going to live around. Now, how do I get into that pose is where the opposite actions happen, right? So let's say I'll put that down to frame 5 or something, right? And then I'll go into in-betweening and show previous and next. So to set myself up for that, I'll try to look for opposing action, right? So what I'll try to do is bring my head maybe slightly more this way and my hand a little bit more inwards, right? So let's say the hand might be here, right? Maybe this arm might be somewhere here. Maybe the head is like this, right? So now what I'm trying to do is set myself up for that opposing action, right? So let's say it's something like that. Okay. Now, if we flip these poses, we start to see it, right? You start to see like, okay, the head is going this way. The hand is going to go this way. And even this arm here is going to go that way. So everything's sort of going outwards, right? Rather than everything kind of going in the same direction. Like if I had keyed this out and put this head sort of over here, sort of in the same direction as the hand, then I would have to try to find some way to break up that action to make it feel more natural, right? Which is where we can kind of incorporate lead and follow and overlapping actions. So even at this, like I don't want to just kind of go and then hit both at the same time because it'll still feel a little bit mechanical. But this is where I start to add in timing and drag and overlap, right? So between this pose and this pose, what I would try to do is maybe lead with the head, right? Because that's where usually where we're looking, right? Is like to see like what the expression is. And so he'll start to come into that pose, like maybe like this, right? Right, like that. Okay. And then this arm might, go in the opposite direction, but it might be still dragging, right? So it might be something like this, right? Okay. And then once we get to this pose, then what I might even do is sort of reverse engineer it a little bit. I might kind of go, okay, so that's going to be the pose, but the hand might continue on, right? So I might get a little bit more like this. So we go beyond that pose, right? But the head might have already hit the accent and start to come downwards, right? So you might kind of get this, and then we might have that. So now basically the head hits on this frame, but the hand is going to hit the pose on this frame, right? So that way we have more overlapping actions happening, right? Now I look for this like in practically every one of my shots. Like I don't know, let's say a guy eating soup or something like that, right? So I'd set myself up, right, for the first pose. Let's say it's like this, right, and the bowl of soup is here. Right, let's say his chair is here. I'm just explaining this very simply, right? So let's say his hand is here with his soup spoon, okay? And his head is back like this. So I know like I'm going to kind of lean forward into where the soup actually is, right? So he might be like this, okay? his legs down there. Okay. And that, so the next key would be maybe something like this, where the body's sort of reversed and the arm is coming up and sort of, he's sort of turned the spoon over like that, you know, so he can eat his soup. And maybe he's scrunching up a little bit just so he's kind of bracing himself for the delicious soup. Like this, right? So what's happening there? We've got some opposing actions, right? So we've got like the head coming down this way, and we've got the hand coming up, right? So we have like all this stuff going on, right? So we have this really nice opposing action rather than if I just did this, right? If I just did that, it would feel really mechanical. Now I can, like after this pose, start to bring him up and then do that. But that's sort of like a lead and follow type thing, right? So we might have the head leading this, right? So the head might come down first as the soup is being sort of dragged, or the soup spoon is dragged through the soup, right? So we have that. And he's starting to anticipate because he doesn't want to drop a soup. He wants to get his head down to the soup before he actually spills it or before he lifts it out of the actual soup bowl, right? So it might be something like that, right? And then from here, you know, maybe it is sort of like, you know, the head sort of started the action and then the spoon can come up, right? So he can actually drink it, right? So that's, I mean, that's if we're going super broad. Like if we're doing it naturally, we just like, we might do something like that, right? We might get that kind of like drink and then sort of let the head sort of come up that way, right? So we might get that sort of lift up slightly this way. So we can really see the soup being taken from the spoon, right? And then and even between here and here, what I would look for is sort of at the head going this way, but maybe this arm here can drop down. So again, just trying to find those little spots where I can bring things in opposite directions, right? So I might have a little bit more of a subtle version there, right? So like I say, try to observe this in everyday life and everything that you do. Like, I don't know, somebody taking a drink from a bottle, right? Same sort of thing, right? You might start here and you might come like this, right? So you have this sort of opposing action. Same thing as the soup, right? So sort of like if it's a can, right? You know, just sort of like open the can, right? You might go slightly opposite action there, you know, so like opening the can, like with the open there, right? And then start to lean into it and then start coming up. So in every little thing that we do, try to look for those opposing actions because it'll add that sort of visual interest to your shots. Like try to avoid things happening in the same direction and at the same time because it always feels mechanical. All right. All the best, you guys. Take care and we'll see you again next time. All right. Bye.